Officer points gun at female federal prosecutor at 2 a.m. She instantly arrests him. Cop draws on female federal attorney at 2 a.m. He never expected her to handcuff him on the spot. On a deserted stretch of Interstate 45 in rural Texas at 2:17 a.m., federal attorney Sarah Kim's routine drive turned into a deadly game. A rogue officer slammed his cruiser's lights behind her, stormed out, sneered at her badge, and yanked his gun on a woman of the law. Her heart pounded, her pulse steadied. She knew one wrong move would cost her everything. But 2 minutes later, the hunter found himself in handcuffs, and justice snapped back. This is the moment she refused to be a victim and forced the system to answer. Before we dive into this unbelievable fight for justice, hit subscribe and ring the bell, because if one federal attorney can challenge a trigger-happy cop in the dead of night, imagine what you could do when you know your rights. Like and comment I'm watching right now to show you're here for the real story. Get ready. This is the raw, unfiltered truth, and you don't want to miss a second. She'd left the courthouse just after midnight, adrenaline still humming from a landmark civil rights ruling she'd argued hours earlier. Federal attorney Sarah Kim, 34 second-generation Korean-American with a razor-sharp legal mind, craved nothing more than a quiet ride home on Interstate 45. The highway was empty, only the steady hum of her tires and the glow of distant billboards. Her phone buzzed once a message from her partner confirming they'd beaten back a corrupt sheriff's office in Dallas. She allowed herself a small smile beneath the rearview mirror. At exactly 2:10 a.m., she eased her silver sedan to a consistent 65 miles per hour, the speed limit posted in bright orange reflectors. She was meticulous, never a speck over the line. Yet within moments, red and blue strobes ignited in her mirror, painting her dashboard in violent flashes. Confusion flickered through her chest. She flicked on her signal and guided the car to the shoulder hands poised neatly at 10 and 2. Her legal training told her this was routine. Her gut screamed otherwise. The patrol cruiser idled 2 car lengths behind, engine ticking in the cold night air. Sarah flicked on her dome light and unclicked her seatbelt, preparing to offer license and proof of office. She knew the weight her badge carried, an emblem of authority, but tonight it felt fragile. The officer approached through the haze of strobing lights. Tall, broad-shouldered badge shining his stare was flat, unreadable. Not a greeting, only a curt license and registration. His hand hovered near the gun at his hip, while the other clenched a tactical flashlight. Sarah's pulse quickened as ice slid down her spine. She reached for her wallet, heart slapping against ribs so hard she feared it might burst. She offered her credentials, a laminated government ID with the Department of Justice, seal her driver's license, everything by the book. Instead of respect, she received a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "No, thank you, ma'am." "No, is everything all right? Just cold dismissal. Step out of the vehicle," he barked. The night air tasted metallic when she slowly undid her seatbelt. She pivoted her feet onto the pavement, breath visible in the headlights' glare. Sarah felt every second stretch, her law-trained mind running through options, calculating risks, craving the safety of backup. She ought to comply, but defiance coiled inside her like a living thing. Behind him, another cruiser rolled in, lights cutting through the darkness. Relief flared until she saw the officer climbing out of that car, not to help her, but to flank the first. Together they framed her like prey. Sarah swallowed the surge of anger that threatened to betray her composure. This was no mere traffic stop. It was a showdown between a woman who wielded the law and officers who thought themselves above it. She squared her shoulders, the evidence of past battles sharpened in her gaze. The federal cases, the injustices she'd exposed, the voices she'd amplified. Out here under the unforgiving halos of squad car lights, Sarah Kim was about to prove that knowing your rights and having the courage to use them could be the deadliest weapon of all. The cruiser's engine ticked like a time bomb as Officer Mitchell loomed at Sarah's driver's side window, flashlight slicing through the gloom. There was no good evening, no attempt at politeness, just a cold glare and a single command: license and registration. His voice was clipped, dismissive, as if her badge meant nothing. Sarah's fingers trembled only slightly as she slid her credentials across the dash. The DOJ ID gleamed under his flashlight beam, proof that she was the law. Yet Mitchell dropped her documents back into her lap with a sneer, as though her authority were a joke. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered. His hand hovered near his holstered weapon, fingers itching to draw. A fire ignited in Sarah's chest. She could feel her pulse hammering against her throat, a reminder that her life was now balanced on a razor's edge. Obedience would mean submission to a man who had already shown contempt for her rank, and for her as a black woman in power. Defiance carried its own peril. But she had trained for moments like this. Slowly, deliberately, she reached for the door handle, keeping her other hand flat on the roof where he could see it. Mitchell's jaw clenched. "I set out," he spat, leaning in so close that she could smell the stale coffee on his breath. Sarah's breath hitched, an involuntary reaction to the threat radiating off him. She counted her options: comply, and hope the next move wasn't a bullet; refuse and force him to justify his abuse of authority. Her eyes flicked to the second cruiser arriving behind them, lights flashing in silent support of Mitchell's aggression. Her voice remained level. "Officer, am I under arrest?" she asked, each word deliberate. "Or are you detaining me without cause?" He laughed, a low, humorless chuckle that grated against her nerves. "You heard me," he said. "Get out." As Sarah eased out of the car, the cold asphalt bit through her leather heels. Mitchell's partner, Officer Lane, emerged from the second cruiser, a hulking figure who didn't even glance at Sarah's credentials. The two of them flanked her like wolves herding prey. Sarah's pulse steadied, even as her mind raced through federal statutes, departmental policies, every rule they were violating. Lane barked, "Turn around, hands on the trunk." His voice was deceptively calm, but the way his hand hovered over his duty belt spoke volumes. Sarah's heart pounded not with fear, but with righteous anger. She took a single step back, measuring her distance, refusing to show weakness. "On what grounds, officer?" she demanded. Her tone was icy controlled. "I have not been accused of any crime." Lane winced as though her words startled him. He exchanged a glance with Mitchell, whose eyes narrowed. Sarah felt a flicker of triumph. She'd punctured the bubble of impunity. Suddenly, Mitchell lunged forward, grabbing her wrist in a vice-like grip. Pain flared through her arm as he twisted it behind her back. "Stop resisting," he growled. His partner raised a radio to call in non-compliance, cementing the lie that would justify any brutality that followed. Sarah's breath rattled in her chest. The night air turned sterile and sharp. She could taste the coppery tang of adrenaline. Panic and clarity warred inside her, panic at the violence, clarity in knowing that every word, every movement was being recorded by her concealed phone camera. She'd activated Federal Safe the moment she saw the lights, a legal fail-safe she'd helped draft for just this kind of abuse. "Let go," she said, her voice low and unwavering. "You're assaulting a federal officer." Mitchell's grip only tightened. His partner stepped closer, blocking the tiny triangle of light where her phone rested on the hood. Sarah's vision tunneled around the barrel of the gun Mitchell now had in his hand, aimed at her temple. Time slowed. She felt the weight of every second, every droplet of sweat sliding down her spine. In that instant, rage surged through her veins, coursing hotter than fear. She pictured every innocent person he'd terrorized before. She saw each story she'd prosecuted: the homeless protester, the undocumented mother, the black teenager pinned under a hood. Each of their silent screams fueled her resolve. Then, cutting through the suffocating stillness, came a voice. "I'm recording this." It was faint, but the authority behind it was unmistakable. Sarah's head snapped to the side, and there, 20 feet away, stood a solitary witness phone aimed at the scene. The glow of the screen reflected in his glasses, proof that their brutality would no longer hide in darkness. Mitchell's finger twitched near the trigger. She saw the flicker of doubt behind his grimace. Lane froze, radio half-raised uncertainty rippling across his face. Suddenly, the air shifted, power slipped from their hands. Sarah inhales deeply, drawing strength from the witness's defiance. "Let her go," the voice called again, steel in every syllable. "Now." For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then sirens wailed in the distance, real backup, not the phantom reinforcement Mitchell had hoped for. His posture sagged, the gun lowering slightly. Lane's stiff posture softened into hesitant compliance. Sarah's arm dropped to her side, her gunshot silence more potent than any shout. Under the strobing blue lights, the two officers finally released their grip. The nightmare was ending, and justice was circling back around them both. In those 8 minutes of escalating hostility, Sarah Kim had stared down the barrel of hate and walked away the victor. What began as routine had become a crucible, forging a testament to courage, preparation, and the unshakable power of accountability. Sarah's heart hammered as the witness's voice cut through the chaos. In that instant, she knew she couldn't simply survive, she had to flip the script. The gun muzzle wobbling against her temple transformed from a threat into an opportunity. This was her turning point. She swallowed the lump in her throat and spoke with the calm authority that had toppled corrupt sheriffs in the courtroom. "Officer Mitchell." She began, her voice steady. "I am a federal attorney. I'm recording this encounter. Every violation you commit tonight will be documented and used against you." Mitchell's grip on the weapon slackened for the briefest moment, just enough for her to slip her thumb across the concealed Federal Safe app icon on her phone. Instantly, a high-definition video stream began uploading to a secure DOJ server, time-stamped and encrypted. She'd helped design this tool for exactly this scenario, a real-time record of abuse of power. Lane shifted his weight uncomfortably. Sarah's words were a blade cutting through his own doubts. She pressed her advantage. "Dispatch to Internal Affairs." She continued projecting her voice so the dash cam mic would pick it up. "We have an unlawful detention and assault on a federal officer. Badge numbers 4239 and 5571 cruiser units, 12 and 14. Backup en route." Behind her, the second cruiser's radio crackled in surprise. Mitchell's code of silence was already fracturing. The men exchanged a glance that trembled between panic and rage. Sarah's plan was unfolding perfectly. She'd baited them into overreach, then weaponized their excess against them. She stepped closer, hands clearly visible, and laid out the next stroke. "You can let me go, now cooperate fully, and this ends quietly. Or you can escalate, use that gun, resist arrest, and your careers are over before the morning sun." Her gaze burned into Mitchell's eyes, unblinking, unyielding. The strobe lights from real backup blinked in the distance, growing louder. Sarah timed her final move. "Captain Reyes," she called, addressing the sergeant who'd just arrived. "I need you to take immediate custody of these officers. They've assaulted a federal officer and brandished a weapon unlawfully." Within seconds, 2 uniformed state troopers swarmed in, weapons holstered, but authority radiating from their disciplined posture. They cuffed Mitchell and Lane before the men could mount any protest. Sarah took a deliberate step back, letting the formal arrest proceed. Under the glare of every camera, her plan for public accountability now complete. In the span of 3 minutes, she'd transformed from prey to judge, jury, and executioner of their misconduct. Her revenge wasn't violence. It was exposure procedure and the unassailable weight of due process. Every illegal shove, every threat, every dropped word was cataloged on secure servers and primed for DOJ action. As the troopers guided the disgraced officers to the cruisers, Sarah exhaled tension, releasing like steam from a pressure valve. She tapped her phone, confirming the encrypted footage was live and that the nation's top civil rights watchdogs were already streaming it to their oversight boards. Her chest tightened with a surge of vindication and relief. She had turned the darkest moment of her night into an unbreakable trap for 2 men who thought themselves untouchable. In that cold Texas dawn, justice would not be a whispered hope, it would be a headline. Sarah watched as the troopers led Mitchell and Lane to the rear of the cruiser, their cuffs clicking like the final notes of a confession. But her revenge wasn't over. It was only just beginning. She stepped forward, phone in hand, and spoke into the live streaming mic, her voice steady and resonant. "This is Federal Attorney Sarah Kim. You're witnessing the lawful arrest of 2 officers who assaulted a federal agent, threatened her life with a firearm, and violated the very oath they swore. This recording is encrypted and time-stamped for the Department of Justice. The moment the words left her lips, 3 things happened at once. First, her Federal Safe app automatically blasted the uncut footage gun barrel inches from her face. Mitchell's sneer, Lane's menacing posture to a secure DOJ server, and to senior leadership's tablets. Second, the dash cams on both cruisers unwittingly left, rolling captured her declaration. And third, within seconds, the bystander's phone stream popped up on social media feeds under Outjok Officer Down, Wat Chosher Justice for Kim, and Cam on Cop. Back in her car, Sarah tapped a sequence on her screen that triggered an automatic notification to the DOJ's Civil Rights Division. A chime echoed in her earpiece, her assistant Malik confirming that the footage had reached Washington. She gave a curt nod to the troopers. "I'll walk you through the evidence chain at the station," she said, voice cold as leather. As she moved to the shoulder, she switched to the secure Case Builder interface, dragging time-stamped video clips into a preliminary complaint form. She tagged the violation's unlawful detention assault with a deadly weapon abuse of authority. Each entry auto-populated with statutes and past precedents, building a watertight case. The app even generated a draft press advisory for DOJ Public Affairs, ready for review. Officer Mitchell head bowed, tried once to speak. His voice cracking, "You can't do this to us," but Sarah cut him off. "You did it to yourselves," she replied, her tone lethal in its calm. "The evidence speaks for itself." She tapped send to IA, and instantly Internal Affairs investigators got the alert, 2 active duty officers under criminal investigation. Behind her, other cruisers arrived, their headlights swinging up the roadside. Local reporters leapt from SUVs, cameras trained. Sarah knew the optics mattered. She stepped forward into the glare, arms uncuffed, but hands open. "My name is Sarah Kim," she announced to the lenses. "And today we proved that nobody, not even those sworn to protect us, is above the law." Her words rang out across the night, an unassailable declaration of accountability. Within the next hour, the department announced an administrative leave for both officers, citing serious breaches of protocol and trust. By dawn, major networks were running the clips, legal analysts dissecting every frame. The city's police union scrambled to contain the fallout, but Sarah's encrypted footage was already trending on government websites and shared by civil rights groups. That morning, she arrived at DOJ headquarters in Washington. In the gleaming atrium, she joined a debriefing with the civil rights chief and the head of internal affairs. They reviewed her live feed, paused on Mitchell's sneer, replayed Lane's radio call, misrepresenting her as a resisting suspect. Each violation was cataloged, each sanction pre-ordered criminal charges, disciplinary hearings, mandatory retraining or termination. Later, at a press conference flanked by senior DOJ officials, Sarah recounted the events in concise, damning detail. "We launched an immediate inquiry," she told the cameras. "Evidence was secured in real time. Today, 2 officers are in handcuffs, and justice has been served." The crowd erupted into murmurs of approval and headlines. The next day declared, "Federal attorney outsmarts abusive cops." Cops arrested on the spot. By noon, Mitchell and Lane had been arraigned on assault and civil rights violation charges. Bail was denied. The judge cited the severity of their actions and the risk of evidence tampering. Their department placed them on unpaid suspension, stripping their badges and firearms. Sarah watched the docket outcomes scroll across her screen, pretrial hearings set, discovery deadlines issued. As the sun climbed higher, messages flooded her inbox, notes of gratitude from community leaders, invitations to speak at legal symposiums, civil rights organizations, offering to fund her officer accountability initiative. Sarah allowed herself a brief, private smile. In the space of 10 minutes, she had transformed from a target into an agent of systemic change, and ensured that every detail of their abuse would be scrutinized, challenged, and punished. Tonight, the road will be silent again. But whenever someone asks what happens when power goes unchecked, Sarah Kim's story, etched forever in video and law, will be the answer. Within hours, the footage had circled the globe. News anchors replayed the moment Officer Mitchell's hand trembled on the holster, juxtaposed with Sarah Kim's unwavering calm. Social media exploded hashtags like "Ponchar Justice on the Highway" and "Ponchar Sarah Kim" trended as millions demanded accountability. In Dallas, the police department held an emergency press conference. The chief of police, visibly strained, faced a barrage of questions. "These actions are unacceptable," he admitted, voice tight. "We will cooperate fully with the Department of Justice and Internal Affairs." His statement echoed across cable networks, but viewers saw the real story, a department scrambling to contain a scandal that unfolded live before their eyes. Civil rights organizations issued statements within the same hour. The ACLU praised Sarah's exemplary courage, calling the incident a watershed moment for police accountability. Local activists rallied outside the department headquarters, holding signs that read, "Badge doesn't override." "Rights and lights don't equal license to kill." Their chants rippled through city streets demanding systemic reform. At DOJ headquarters in Washington, Sarah stood beside Deputy Attorney General Ramirez as he announced a full-scale investigation into both officers and the department's culture of impunity. Cameras captured her expression, equal parts steely resolve and relief. When asked if she feared retaliation, Sarah replied, "No. The truth is my shield." That line became the banner of countless commentary pieces plastered across opinion columns the following morning. Back in her hometown, Sarah received an outpouring of support. Former clients whose civil rights she'd defended sent messages of gratitude. Colleagues shared the encrypted link to the full 12-minute video praising her foresight in using Federal Safe. Malik, her assistant, joked in a group chat, "You just broke the internet and changed the law." Judge Catherine Liu, who had presided over Sarah's landmark case weeks earlier, tweeted, "Incredible demonstration of justice under fire. Proud of Sarah Kim DOJ for holding abusers of authority to account." Her tweet was retweeted thousands of times, consolidating Sarah's reputation not only as a brilliant attorney, but as a symbol of resistance. Meanwhile, Mitchell and Lane sat in separate holding cells. Their defense attorneys scrambled to negotiate bail, but prosecutors opposed, citing the severity of assaulting a federal officer with a weapon. Bail was denied, and the judge ordered pretrial detention, underscoring the gravity of their misconduct. Within 48 hours, both officers were arraigned on felony assault and civil rights violation charges. Media coverage labeled it the fastest arrest of on-duty officers in modern Texas history. On camera, Sarah reflected on the public reaction. Her voice was measured, carrying the weight of every name she'd championed in court. "This isn't just about one traffic stop," she said. "It's about every person ever silenced by those sworn to protect. Today, we showed that the law can and must protect everyone equally." Her words resonated, driving spikes in DOJ recruitment inquiries and inspiring calls for analogous safe passage laws in other states. By the end of the week, the police department announced comprehensive reforms, mandatory body cameras with automatic upload, external oversight committees, and bias training for all officers. While some critics called the measures insufficient, the momentum for change was undeniable. In her office, as sunlight filtered through tall windows, Sarah reviewed the final DOJ report. She marked the list of recommended charges, disciplinary actions, and policy overhauls. A soft smile crossed her face. Justice at last was more than a concept. It was a living, breathing reality. And for every viewer who'd clicked to watch her story, Sarah's journey became a beacon proof that one determined individual, armed with knowledge and courage, can transform fear into power and outrage into lasting reform. In the aftermath, one truth stands out: unchecked power is the greatest threat to justice. Officer Mitchell and Lane believed their uniforms placed them above scrutiny, but the very tools they used to oppress became the instruments of their downfall. Sarah Kim's use of technology, legal expertise, and sheer resolve turned a moment of terror into a blueprint for accountability. Their barrel-pointed moment underscores the critical lesson that every citizen, no matter how vulnerable, can arm themselves with knowledge. Federal Safe wasn't just an app. It was a declaration that transparency is non-negotiable. When power is wielded in darkness, recording lights become beacons of truth. But technology alone isn't enough. Sarah's calm, methodical invocation of her authority highlights the importance of understanding your rights. She didn't yell or panic. She cited statutes, used official channels, and projected confidence. That composure forced her aggressors to reveal their misconduct. It's a blueprint for anyone facing abuse: remain visible, document everything, and insist on procedure. Her story also exposes the corrosive culture that allows officers to weaponize authority. Internal Affairs and the DOJ moved swiftly only because evidence was indisputable. No, he said, she said, could erase a videotaped gun barrel pressed to a woman's temple. The public outcry fueled by viral footage forced institutional reform in days. That level of accountability should be the norm, not the exception. Emotionally, this incident speaks to our collective anger and fear when those meant to protect become predators. We identify with Sarah's initial dread, the tightening chest, the racing thoughts, then with her righteous fury as she turned the tables. That emotional arc from terror to triumph is the pulse of effective storytelling, and it's the pulse of real change. Ultimately, Sarah's victory isn't personal revenge, it's systemic reform. It reminds us that justice requires both individual courage and structural checks. When society demands transparency, when we refuse to look away, we transform isolated incidents into movements. If there's one takeaway, it's this: never underestimate what a determined individual can do when armed with the law and the willingness to use it. Justice isn't passive. It demands action, clarity, and the courage to shine a light into the darkest abuses of power. This story proves that when one person refuses to stay silent, an entire system can be forced to change. If Sarah Kim's courage inspired you, don't let it end here. Share this video with someone who needs to know their rights. Smash that like button if you believe no one should fear those sworn to protect us, and subscribe for more real-life battles won against abuse of power. Comment, "I stand with justice," below to show your support, and let's keep the spotlight on accountability. Because justice isn't handed down, it's claimed by those brave enough to demand it.